We are almost to the end of May in the Major League Baseball season, and we are in our 53rd episode of the We Know Baseball podcast. We have so many things to talk about because guess what? We might have a new best player in Major League Baseball. Let's get into it.
Let's go. Batter up. We're taking the afternoon off. It's a beautiful day for a home run, but even a triple's okay. We're gonna cheer and boo and raise a hullabaloo at the ball game today. At the ball game, a wonderful ball game today.
Wow. Welcome back. Welcome back. All. We have another beautiful episode of the We Know Baseball podcast. My name is Ryan, at Ryan Knows Ball on Twitter. Our social media handles are at We Know Ball Sports, Instagram, TikTok. Check us out on YouTube. Got a great show for you guys today. We are back after a semi-brief hiatus. Guess what? Life, right? Life happens. Things got in the way. And as it turns out, that ultimately might impact some of these other fun things we do, like this podcast. So the We Know Baseball podcast today is May 24th, 2024. Okay, we are almost at the end of 2 full months of the regular season in Major League Baseball. We are hoping to be much more regular with this show. Like, I'm talking at least weekly, maybe semi-weekly. And honestly, a lot of different things have unfolded that I think require maybe some more attention. But again, as it kind of turns out, things happen. Life happens. And so many different talking points have unfolded in Major League Baseball since we have last discussed the sport as a whole, right? Standings have really started to solidify. Players have started to emerge at a ridiculous rate, a ridiculous clip. And there's some trends, not only specific team trends, but there's some league-wide trends that I think we need to discuss. And we also don't want to spend too much time talking about it, but as it's not very surprising, Major League Baseball umpires have found a way to inject themselves once again into the spotlight for no particular reason. And it's causing some serious waves in the world of baseball and the world of sports media. I think it's more of a baseball specific thing. We'll get into it, right? Because the mainstream guys, especially at this point in time in the sporting calendar, they're not going to pick up a baseball story or spend a lot of time talking about it. But it is a big deal, and it's garbage. Before we get into that, we've done this in the past. Wanted to quickly go over this episode today, specifically being episode 53. Some notable MLB players to wear number 53. Before we get into the episode, quickly, I was surprised to see some of these names and the years that some of these guys wore this jersey number. So, episode 53, MLB players most notable who wore number 53. And this is sorted by career WAR leaders based on players who wore number 53. And the player who wore number 53, who leads the MLB in WAR, is Don Drysdale. Not sure I would have ever pegged Don Drysdale as a number 53 guy, but interesting to see Don with 67 career WAR. Very, very respectable career. Played on both the Brooklyn and LA Dodgers, interestingly enough. And as you go down the list, there's some serious names on this list. Some of these guys only wore 53 for a short period of time. Some of them wore it for their whole career. Drysdale looks like was pretty much a whole career number 53. The second most wore from a player who wore number 53 is Bobby Abreu. Bobby Abreu, man. Bobby Abreu was just such a dog. 60 career WAR. He wore number 53, it looks like, every single destination he had in his career. Houston, Philly, the Yankees, the Angels, uh, and the New York Mets. As we get on this list, it's a lot of guys who only wore 53 for one season. You got Oral Hershiser with 56 WAR, Reggie Sanders, Barry Zito, Alfonso Soriano, Melky Cabrera. I'm kind of skipping over some guys. Um, Alex Cobb is a notable one. Joaquin Benoit, Chris Young, Seattle Mariners in 14. I'd have to assume that's big, tall Chris Young, and I'm not even going to honestly dive into that much more. Brandon Woodruff, Darren O'Day, Rich Hill. So, interestingly enough, and there's a player on here I wanted to mention too. It's a little bit of a teaser for what we're going to talk about later on in the episode. But one player who apparently wore number 53 for one season on the Tampa Bay Rays in 1999 is Bobby Witt. Bobby Witt Sr. That's all I'm going to do. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But as we also like to do on the We Know Baseball podcast, we go over the standings. We go from East to West, and we go American League to National League. So we'll start with the AL East, go over the standings, give you guys some of the numbers and metrics, and maybe give you some team stats and then individual stats too. I think that's what we wanted to do today and talk a little bit of ball. But we go over the standings, East to West, American League to National League, kind of going over some of the storylines as we dive into those divisions. Okay. So without further ado, going into the standings, reading them off, and starting in the American League East, we've got the best record in the American League going to New York Yankees. Okay. New York Yankees sit at the top of the American League East and at the top of the American League. 35-17. They're 8-2 in their last 10. Plus 84 run differential. Their expected win-loss is exactly what their win-loss is. So, what can you take away from that as a whole? Number one, the Yankees are good. Number two, there's no flukes, right? There's no, there's no discrepancies. That's the word I was looking for in terms of, oh, like these guys are getting lucky, right? Like they're winning a bunch of one-run games and it's a fluke that they're good. No. Their expected win-loss is right where their actual win-loss is. Not to mention, they've played some pretty darn good teams. And they've taken care of business against the bad teams. They play well against the good teams. They're coming off a 4-game split with the Seattle Mariners, and they lost back-to-back games. I think one or both of them, the Mariners ended up rallying and kind of came back to take the lead in the late innings. Yankees bullpen kind of faltered. But if you're looking at team stats, right, you're ranking all the teams in Major League Baseball, and you rank them in terms of offense, right? Who leads the league in home runs? The New York Yankees. Who leads the league in OPS? The New York Yankees. Who leads the league in on-base percentage? Tied for first? The Yankees. So, what does that tell you? The Yankees are smashing the ball. I mean, they're just smashing the ball, and they're getting on base. And when you have a combination of a team that's getting on base like crazy, and then you're slugging, you're going to score a lot of runs. You're going to score a ton of runs. Not to mention, who leads the league in team ERA? The New York Yankees. Okay? The Yankees are the real deal in 2024. And I'm not exactly sure what the discrepancy was from last year's team to this year's team. Obviously, the addition of Juan Soto, the addition of Alex Verdugo. Of course, the roster is different and definitely better than it was last year. But based on the Yankees and the way they're trending in 2024, is this team, if it ends up where it looks like it's going to, is this team actually 20 games better than the team last year? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. In fact, last year, they had Garrett Cole. Okay. But when a team like the Yankees, and we mentioned this before, okay, when a team like the Yankees goes through what they've gone through, And what I mean by that is what they've gone through in the offseason, right? When the Yankees found out they were going to lose Garrett Cole, they had two options. Number one, slide back into the rut, do exactly what they did last year, go through the motions, don't play with a ton of energy, don't be dedicated and committed to a team wide approach, um, play with limited enthusiasm, hope for the best, see what happens, and finish just above 500. Or option two they took is we love Garrett. He's the reigning Cy Young, but we're a bunch of dogs. And I mean, literally, these guys are like woofing at each other in the dugout. They decided to embrace and commit to an attention to detail, maximum effort, intensity, high level at bats, working counts, finding barrels, leading the league at hard contact. And on the pitching side of it, the pitcher's saying, we love Garrett. He's the man, but we are going to go out and be who we can be. We're going to step up. We're going to elevate our game. Instead of sliding down into a rut like we did last year, we're going to elevate our game. And as we sit almost 2 months into the season, we've got the New York Yankees leading the league in OPS, leading the league in team ERA. Garrett Cole hasn't thrown a pitch for them this year. And Aaron Judge has started to heat up quite a bit, but got off to a pretty slow start. They also haven't had DJ LeMahieu, probably one of the best contact hitters in the sport. They also haven't had Jason Dominguez, the super Martian prospect that they called up last year, who is dealing with Tommy John recovery. Like, they don't have all their guys. They have a lot of them, but they don't have all their dudes. Garrett Cole won the Cy Young for them last year, hasn't thrown a pitch, and they lead the league in ERA. Of course, Yankee fans are going to be happy. Of course, they're going to be cocky. But it was obvious and apparent from the early parts of this season that the New York Yankees were a completely different team. Their approach was different. Their effort level was different. Their intensity was different. The vibes in the dugout were different. Seen a lot of stuff inside the world of baseball media about how a lot of times last year, the Yankees would win 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4 in a road series and have that final getaway game before they head back home. And they'd roll out a lineup of a bunch of backups, a bunch of bench guys, backup catcher, backup center fielder, backup third baseman. And then they'd lose and go, well, it is what it is. And in the early parts of this season, the Yankees would have an opportunity to take that final game of the series or take that series winning game on a getaway day, in the afternoon, on a Wednesday, on a Thursday. And they would roll out all 9 starters, same lineup as the night before, same lineup as the night before that. And then they would go out and then they would kill people. And that's what they're doing. Best team ERA, highest team OPS, most home runs in baseball. The Yankees, as a team and Yankee fans, are in dreamland right now. And as it stands, knock on wood, make sure everybody stays on the field and contributes at a high level. Yankee fans and Yankees as a team, the expectation has to be ALCS minimum or bust. Has to be. Because you're looking at a point now where, yeah, maybe you get caught by the Orioles. Maybe the Orioles heat up a little bit, right? Maybe the Yankees regress a little bit. All very realistic, all very much a possibility. But in that same time frame between now and the end of the season, yeah, maybe the Yankees get caught by the Baltimore Orioles, but they're also going to reacquire Garrett Cole. They're also going to reacquire Jason Dominguez. You're getting DJ LeMahieu back in the lineup playing third base every single day. The Yankees are only going to get better. Even if they get caught by, I think the Orioles is probably the only team that can give them a legitimate threat. Who cares for the Yankees and the Yankee fans? Without being ungrateful, without being unreasonable, without losing your mind, The expectation now, seeing what this team's done in the first 2 months, the expectation's got to be ALCS at an absolute minimum. Has to be. It should be. The Yankees are good. They're very good. And I want to seriously commend a lot of those guys in that starting rotation that had an option, an opportunity sitting in front of them, finding out that their workhorse, their lead guy, their ace, the reigning American League Cy Young Award winner, was going to miss a substantial amount of time. And instead of taking it the opposite direction, losing focus, losing commitment, making excuses, not putting out maximum effort, sliding into a rut, being middle of the pack, they went ahead and did the exact opposite. Every single guy in that pitching rotation, every single guy in that bullpen has stepped up like crazy. And it's super promising to see that because now you're the Yankees and you know, even if we lose a guy or two down the stretch one way or another, we've got a bunch of dogs. But they're going to reacquire Garrett Cole. And now you sit here almost 2 months into the season and the Yankees, I mean, good as it gets right now, man. As good as it gets. Haven't even gone through the standings that much, but man, just wanted to touch on that. Baltimore Orioles sit in second place in the American League East, 30-18. 3 games behind the Yankees. I mentioned, if a team can catch the Yankees, I believe it's going to be the Orioles. The rest of the American League just doesn't really scare me. I mean, there's other good teams, but the rest of the American League doesn't scare me that much. Going through the other division teams and won't even go through the standings quickly. But as it stands right now, take the Yankees. Who's better? Yankees or Cleveland Guardians? Yankees. Who's better? Yankees or Royals? Yankees. Yankees or Mariners? Yankees. Yankees or Astros? Yankees. Yankees or Rangers? Yankees. Right? So, but you go Yankees, Orioles, ALCS, 7-game set. I don't know who's going to win that series. I don't know. Depends who's healthy. Depends who's available. The Orioles 30-18, 3 games back, plus 54 run differential. They're playing fine, man. They're 17-10 at home. They're 13-8 away. They're 16-6 against teams over 500. It's really impressive. So the Orioles are fine. They've been able to mix in a bunch of pieces, have high level contributors. They are 4-6 in their last 10, and people are like, "Oh my God, it's Orioles." No? They just got swept for the first time in like 2 seasons. So people are wondering, maybe they're sliding a little bit. I think getting swept in a 3 or 4 game series is about as bad as it's going to get for the Orioles in terms of a slide, quote unquote, because they'll find their way out of it really quickly. And yeah, they're fine, man. I think they're playing the White Sox this weekend too. So talk about good timing and a way to maybe get right. That's the perfect chance to do it. Red Sox are in third place in the American League East. They're 26-24. Definitely overachieving, I would say. They're number 2 in the league in team ERA, so they're pitching the lights out. Their offense has been okay. Their run scored is kind of middle of the pack, a little bit, on the higher end, I would say. But they're pitching really well, really well. Their expected win-loss is actually 3 games better than where they are, 29-21. Plus 39 run differential. That might indicate to me, I think they got a couple blowout wins, and that's where the expected win-loss maybe could potentially get skewed. But 26-24 for the Red Sox. I mean, looking at the rest of the American League, projecting that out to the rest of the season, that's a playoff spot. So, I mean, hey, we'll see what happens with the Red Sox. I don't think they're, a crazy legitimate threat, but they have really good starting pitching, So if that continues in any team, in any situation, for the most part, if you have top 3 starting staff ERA, top 3 pitching ERA in baseball, you're going to be competitive, right? You may not be a world beaters, but you're going to be good. So 26-24, Plus 39 is a very good run differential. Keep your eye on the Red Sox, right? One of those teams that organizationally, they've been there and done that. They've competed at a high level. Alex Cora knows how to lead a group of players. So we'll see, right? We'll see what happens. In fourth place, the Tampa Bay Rays are 25 and 26. And in fifth place, the Blue Jays are 23 and 26. Rays minus 40 run differential. Blue Jays minus 30 run differential. Both of those teams, while seeming to be kind of comparable in terms of record and where they stand and run differential and all those things, it's two different stories because I think for the Rays, every year it's like, here's our roster on paper in the computer. This team could win a lot of games. But a lot of the times, I think for the Tampa Bay Rays organization, they simply just don't factor in the human element. They don't factor in team camaraderie. They don't factor in, uh, you know, travel day, like this, the human aspect of the game and positionally and veteran leadership and all those different things. They're built with numbers for the most part in Tampa Bay. That's what they have to do. That's what they're working with in terms of payroll. I understand it, but when it ultimately doesn't pan out for the Rays, I think it's less disappointing because you're like, well, that's, I mean, look at them. They're the Rays. I mean, come on, look at that stadium, look at that payroll. They don't make it. They don't play well. Wow. Okay. Well, very forgettable team. No disrespect, but that's just who they are when they're in a division with the Red Sox and the Yankees and now the up and coming Orioles. For the Blue Jays, it's much more disappointing. In my opinion, it's much more disappointing if this trend and their record projects out to the end of the season, right? 3 games under right now. Let's just say that's 2 months into the season. Say they finish 8 to 10 under 500. I mean, that's really disappointing. With the young core and the way that they kind of built things up in Toronto, Vlad, Bo Bichette, Kevin Biggio, the trade for Dalton Varsho. You have, now they have a bunch of young guys, but the pitching staff with Gosman and Kikuchi, Manoa back in that rotation and starting to figure things out. Chris Bassett. Kirk was an all-star catcher a couple of years ago. And then now it's just like not great. Not a ton of offensive production from them this year. They signed Justin Turner. I know they had George Springer battling through some injuries, but he was at the top of the order. It just seems like a team with the names that they have in that 26-man roster that's like, oh yeah, they should win 87 this year, right? They should win 85. They should be competing for a wild card spot. They're not going to go over and hammer the Yankees when they play that, but the Blue Jays should be contending for a wild card spot. And then, as we sit here, mentioned their 26 and 23 record, minus 30 run differential. They've started to play a tiny bit better, but 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago, like it wasn't looking great in Toronto. And the rumors are that the Toronto Blue Jays are like shopping and exploring trade options, potentially, not super aggressive, but have taken calls and explored conversations on Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette. That's crazy. You tell me that 2 years ago or last year, I'd say, what happened to the Blue Jays? And is somebody offering them 4 or 5 number one prospects for those players? Now, both guys kind of underperforming, pretty much a microcosm of the team as a whole, where it's high expectation, have had a lot of previous success, but ultimately this year, it just doesn't seem to be clicking. Doesn't seem to be clicking. One of those teams with the Blue Jays where it's like every time they face a good-ish starting pitcher, they just get dominated, right? They score 2 runs. And the final score, 4-2, right? 5-3. It's not that bad, but it's like that's happened this year already like 15 times, right? So it's disheartening for Blue Jays fans. Do I think Vlad and Bo Bichette will get traded? I don't. If they do, that will be some earth-shattering stuff. I certainly don't hope either of them come to the Padres, not because I don't think they're great players. I just know AJ Preller is a psychotic lunatic when it comes to being aggressive about trades. And we'll talk about some of the guys he's acquired here and how they've made an impact. But I don't want Vlad or Bo Bichette if it's going to cost me three more top five prospects, right? I just don't, we don't need them. But I don't know. We'll see. I don't think the guys will get traded no matter what. But maybe, I don't know. I mean, if the Blue Jays start to like really spiral and we're approaching the trade deadline, you never know. You really never know. So that's the AL East. All right. Moving on to the AL Central. American League Central is led at the moment by the Cleveland Guardians. Guardians are 33 and 17, plus 65 run differential, playing right to their expected win loss for the most part. They dominate at home. And I think the interesting thing about them is that they're actually offensively scoring a lot of runs. As it stands right now, it looks like they have the third most runs scored in the American League. Like, I don't think anybody would have said that about the Cleveland Guardians. They're not the worst offensive team, maybe of all time, but outside of Jose Ramirez, maybe Josh Naylor, maybe Andres Jimenez, who's off to an okay start, those are some guys you've seen be good on offense. But those are three players. The rest of the lineup needs to contribute and produce, and it has. Promising signs for the Guardians. Also, without a guy like Shane Bieber, it's hard because I do like the Guardians. I like Stephen Vogt. But they just strike me as a team that, as good as they may be in a semi mediocre division, yeah, maybe they come out on top in the American League Central, but it just gives kind of the feeling of, okay, we won. Now we're, hosting the 4 seed Orioles because the Orioles, maybe finished second in the AL East. And then the Orioles just hammer them. You know what I mean? Or like somehow the Guardians end up playing, the Yankees in the ALDS, and then the Yankees just kill them. Like you know, it's not bad. It's respectable. I don't think the Guardians fans are expecting them to go through and run the table and win the World Series. I mean, I guess that's better chance than most if you make the playoffs because you're at least in the tournament. But I don't think the Guardians are gonna. I don't think they're just gonna do a ton of damage. I also just think they're gonna regress a little bit. And when they regress, and what I mentioned by that, and what I mean is, I think they're gonna get caught because in second place in the American League Central is the Kansas City Royals, who, by the way, have a plus 72 run differential. That's second best in the American League. They're 32 and 19. They're 8 and 2 in their last 10. They've won 6 in a row. If you look at team stats this year, and we'll look at team stats, but we'll also look at player stats. These guys are smashing the ball. Smashing the ball. And of course, as I want to pull up the stats here, they are loading because why would they, right? Here's player hitting stats. Again, just not loading. I don't know what's wrong with my internet. It always, of course, does this when I'm trying to look at things. But yeah, as it stands, gosh, I just want to. I just had it open. I'm so sorry. I had it open and for some reason now it's incapable of producing the MLB.com/stats, the web page. That is now unresponsive. Oh, and now the standings are frozen as well. Perfect. So we'll go ahead and close this entire tab. In fact, what we can do here is go to our main page, MLB.com. There we go. Standings, you can open in a new tab, and then stats. So we have the standings open over here, and then we have the stats. And I pulled up the stats, and I wanted to look at individual hitting stats, okay, because I wanted to sort of sort things out based on where individual players stand in comparison to the rest of the league. As it sits right now, two of the top 14 hitters in the American League, I'm sorry, in all of baseball, two of the top 14 hitters in all of baseball in terms of OPS are on the Kansas City Royals. Seventh best OPS in baseball is Salvador Perez, who is having a resurgence on the offensive side of the ball. 14th in the league in OPS is Bobby Witt Jr. Okay, we talked about episode 53 and how his dad wore number 53 for, I guess, a season. Why don't we do this? Why don't we pull up Bobby Witt Jr.'s 2024 Baseball Savant page? And why don't we look at some of the categories on the offensive side of the ball, on the defensive side of the ball, and on the bases? So his 916 OPS is good for 14th best in Major League Baseball. Okay, that's pretty good, right? That would put him in, some would say, the top 15 in baseball. What percentile rank does Bobby Witt fall into in these offensive categories? Expected slugging, 98th percentile. Expected batting average, 100th percentile. Expected weighted on base, 98th percentile. Bat speed, 91st percentile. Hard hit percentage, 94th percentile. K rate, 82nd percentile. The only areas where he might falter is swinging outside the zone and a little bit of swing and miss. The strikeouts maybe a touch higher than where they could be, but luckily it's something that you can fix and work on the offensive side of the ball. What you can't fix and work on is hand-eye coordination. You can't fix and work on barrel percentage. You can't fix and work on speed. At least you can try on some of those categories. But with strikeouts and swing and miss, that's something that is probably the most fixable of anything in his game. So on the offensive side of the ball, he's got a 14 batting run value. That's 94th percentile. He is hitting the ball hard. He's hitting the ball hard consistently. He is slugging. He's getting base hits better than anybody. He's getting on base. He's not striking out a ton. His range and outs above average this season so far at 10, that's in the 100th percentile. His arm strength is in the 78th percentile. That's pretty darn good at a premier position of shortstop. Oh, and his sprint speed is in the 100th percentile. I'm going to go out on a limb right now and tell you this time next year, it will be definitively true. And he's on his way up to this milestone and marker in 2024 already. But this time next year, we will be talking about Bobby Witt Jr. as the best player in Major League Baseball. I went ahead and said it. If Shohei Ohtani doesn't end up contributing at a high level on the mound, I think Bobby Witt Jr. this time next year, let's put it this way. First of all, Bobby Witt Jr. is already a top 5 player in Major League Baseball. Already. Right now, today, somebody said, oh, this is the question. This is what I was getting at. Okay. You always see the question posed on sports media, the question put out in the air in a lot of different sports, but especially more recently, I see it in baseball. You've got to pick one guy. You're starting an expansion team. You're starting a franchise. You got to pick, of the current players, one guy right now to start your team with. Who are you taking? The answers come out of all different parts of the league. Mike Trout, Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Yordan Alvarez. All these guys are great. They're all really good players. I'm not sure there's really a wrong answer, but I'm telling you, my answer to that question, one player I have to pick him and start my franchise with, I'm taking Bobby Wood Jr. And honestly, I don't really think it's close in my considerations. 23 years old, top of the league in bat to ball, top of the league in slug, top of the league in speed, top of the league in defensive range. He plays a premier position. He's signed to a pretty comfortable team friendly contract. And I think this time next year, Bobby Witt Jr. is going to be in the conversation of best player in baseball. And if Shohei Ohtani comes back, tries to pitch for the Dodgers, turns out it doesn't work out very well, or he starts games, but he only starts, for the back half of next year, or only pitches 3 innings at a time. And it turns out that Shohei Ohtani on the mound just ultimately, doesn't really end up providing them a ton of value. They want to keep him healthy, so he turns into just a hitter. I'm taking Bobby Witt Jr. as just a hitter over Shohei Ohtani. Now, if Ohtani comes out and pitches like he has in the past, or, that's a whole different ballgame. That opens up a whole different can of worms. And, of course, that would put Ohtani way above Bobby Witt and anybody else in terms of best player in baseball. But offensively, I take Bobby Witt over Ohtani. The only other guy that I could potentially rival with Bobby Witt Jr. in terms of offensive production is Mookie Betts. I think Ohtani, Mookie Betts, and Bobby Witt, those are the top 3 offensive players in the entire sport of baseball. The differentiating factor and that question that gets posed about which guy do you choose to start your franchise with, Bobby Witt's 23 years old. He's 23, and he is tearing the cover off the ball. And he's so fast. All he does is steal bases. He plays a premier position at the highest level of anybody in the sport. I don't know how you don't go to Bobby Witt and go, that's the guy I'm starting my team with. Yeah, Mookie plays short too. He's been a little bit shaky this year. He's a great athlete. He's 30, 31? No disrespect. He's an unbelievable player. Bobby Witt's 23. I'm starting my team with Bobby Witt Jr. If I have to pick a team, or pick a player rather, to start a franchise with right now today, Nashville MLB team expansion franchise, and I'm the GM and they go, pick one dude. You got to pick one dude, and then we'll build the team in a different variety of ways. But you got to pick one dude, and you can have him with the current contract state he has to start your franchise with. I'm going Bobby Witt Jr., and I just don't think it's that close. I don't. Bobby Witt Jr. is unbelievable. I just want to make sure everybody understands, okay? Because the Royals have been bad for a long time. They're in the middle of the country. After they won the World Series, they've done nothing but kind of start to fade outside of the national spotlight. They didn't really have the star value that they had in the past with those World Series caliber teams. And it's just a very passoverable franchise. Probably not a word, but you get the point. Okay. Kansas City, AL Central, bad division. I think everybody needs to just kind of restructure their thought process when it comes to the Royals as a team, but more so specifically, you're going to need to restructure your thought process because they've got, I believe, the player that will end up being the best player in baseball in the next year to 2 years. Bobby Witt Jr. Oh my God, he's so good. Oh my God, he's so fast. He has an unbelievable arm. He hits the ball hard. He hits the ball hard consistently. He slugs. He runs the bases. He is just the definition of a perfect ball player. And he's 23 years old. Guys, when somebody profiles like Bobby Witt Jr., size, 6'1", super fast, plays shortstop, typically you're like, okay, yeah, he's going to be a great player. He's a good athlete. Type of guy that probably finishes his seasons with, 18 to 20 homers, kind of what he did in his rookie year, right? 20 home runs, 30 bags, 722 up. He had no. He had 30 homers last year. No, he had 30 homers and 49 stolen bases. No, like Bobby Witt Jr. can put up the same or better offensive numbers that Ronald Acuna can, but he plays unbelievable defense at a premier position, arguably the hardest position on the entire field besides catcher. To get this kind of production from a player like Bobby Witt Jr. at shortstop, and he's 23, I'm telling you guys, I'm taking him as my pick for, I don't even know. He's going to be the guy in the next year to 2 years where people are like, oh my God, wait, Bobby Witt just went 40-40, like easy? Yeah. Yep. Sure did. Dude's a savage, man. It's unbelievable. He's an absolute monster. Absolute monster. So, again, going through the standings. Okay, we've spent a lot of time talking about these guys and these teams. The point is keep an eye out for the Royals, right? Keep an eye out. Third place in the AL Central, Minnesota Twins, 26-23. I don't got much to say, much to touch on with those guys because Twins strike me as one of those teams similar to Cleveland Guardians, where it's like, yeah, they might be good, yeah, they might get in the playoffs, but they'll get killed by whoever they play. They don't have a ton of starting pitching depth. They don't have a ton of offensive killers, and they're just kind of what they are. They're just kind of They're not bad. They're not great. They're right in the middle. Maybe a couple games over 500. Maybe get in the playoffs and lose. Right. So yeah, Twins 26-23. The Tigers are 23-27. I mean, that's an improvement. It's semi-respectable. Um, I had some stuff written down here, some notes about potentially, you know, talking about Javi Baez and that situation. Um, yeah, we'll talk about it. So, okay. So Javi Baez career stats, right? Um, he never hit lower than 273 in his first 5 years in Chicago. He got second place in MVP voting in 2018, Silver Slugger, All Star, and then followed that up with another All Star performance. Never hit below 273. And then COVID came with the Cubs, kind of a neglected, forget about it year. Didn't play great, but it's shortened COVID season. Following year, it was his final year in his contract with the Cubs. A lot of speculation about what that team was going to do, how they were going to treat it. Of course, they end up trading Rizzo and Javi Baez and Chris Bryant. So they kind of sent the pieces away, right? But Javi Baez goes from never hitting below 273 in a full season with the Cubs to contract year to monster deal with the Detroit Tigers. 6 years, 140 million, right? All of a sudden, Javi Baez goes 238 with a 671 OPS 2 years ago to 222 last year with a 593 OPS. And this year, he's hitting 207 with a 513 OPS. Now, I loved Javi Baez on the Cubs. I loved his energy. I loved his intensity. I loved how he played on the base paths. He was an elite defender, crazy bat speed, slugged pretty well. Was just an impact player, high leverage guy, played premier positions up the middle, and was the type of guy that, yeah, maybe a team like Detroit goes after, gives a big money, starts to build around, right? As he comes over and has the postseason experience and the veteran leadership, quote unquote. Well, as it turns out, Javi Baez did what a lot of guys have done. I think you can put Javi Baez, I think you can put Francisco Lindor, you can put Chris Bryant, you can put Xander Bogaerts. All four of those guys put them kind of in the same category, probably missing a couple of guys. But what do they all have in common? They all came. How do I put this? How do I put this? Chris Bryant, Baez, Bogarts, Lindor. Okay. Four guys that came up in organizations where they were expected to be pretty good, high level prospects. The teams had a good amount of success in the early parts of their career. These guys were allowed to develop in the early parts of their career, become middle of the order guys, become big time contributors, get a ton of postseason experience, put up some pretty good numbers, play really well for the first 6 years of their career. And then comes time for free agency, comes time for contract renegotiation of some capacity. And all four of those guys come out and get an absolute monster bag. Monster bag, right? 30 million plus a year. And then magically, all of a sudden, all four of these guys forget how to play baseball. They just forgot. They just forgot how to hit. They can't hit balls hard. They're striking out way more. A lot of these guys spend a little bit more time on the injured list, right? And as it ultimately turns out, just not really quite incentivized to go out and give it everything they've got. And in the case of Javier Baez, I don't know how anybody can watch him play and go, oh, yeah, he's definitely trying his hardest. It's almost like he's like almost like throwing games. Like it's almost like he's trying to be bad on purpose, right? Some of the swings that you see, it's like it's a laughable offense. Sliders that are not in the other batter's box, they're on the other side of the left-handed batter's box. Curveballs that are bouncing on the grass, and he just big old load, boom, swing. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? I can tell you why. It's no disrespect because Javi Baez has had a great career and he earned the contract that he got. But at this point in his career, the money he's got, the team he's on, nobody's around in Detroit, on the team, in the media, in the fan base. There's no expectations for the team. So there's nobody in there that's going to hold him accountable. And the money is coming in regardless. So what is the incentive for Javi Baez to go out, stick his nose in there, shorten his swing, cut down the leg kick, stop chasing every single pitch that's not a fastball down the middle, and put together some numbers that he previously had in Chicago? What's the incentive behind it? Here's the answer. There is none. That's why he goes out and strikes out 3 times every single game he plays. That's why his career numbers in Detroit have been substantially lower than where they were in Chicago. It's not a coincidence. He got the money. He's in a team and an organization where doesn't really need to be held accountable that much. And lo and behold, he forgot how to hit. He is now a terrible baseball player. And I'm not really sure, how teams avoid this. But ultimately, Javi Baez has stopped trying. He stopped caring. He really has nobody around him to hold him accountable, whether it's organizationally or in the fan base. And when you have all those things mixed together, combined with a big, fat, juicy paycheck coming in, turns out that's what it's going to be when you get a guy like Javi Baez. It's just, that's the answer. Because this starting, 2022 was his first year. People, first year on the team, and he's going to struggle, and he's going to, it's a new environment, whatever, right? Whatever. But people started asking last year and going into this year, what has happened to Javier Baez? The downfall of Javier Baez needs to be studied. No, there's nothing to study. He stopped trying. He stopped caring. He doesn't care anymore. Why? Why would he care? Seriously. And I don't mean that as a rhetorical. I don't mean that as disrespectful towards Javi. Why would he care? Why would he try hard? He is getting guaranteed money. It's coming in for the next 4 years. He's on a team that has no expectations. There's a fan base there that's seen a lot of losing seasons over the last few years. There's no reason for him to play well because He's gone out time and time again all year last year and so far all year this season and swung at sliders that are on the other side of the left-handed batter's box. Curveballs that are bouncing in the grass before home plate. He just swings at them. He doesn't care. Obviously, he doesn't care. And until somebody else holds them super accountable, or he gets like viciously booed by the Detroit fan base, nothing's going to change. Nothing will change. And it'll be a really bad contract for the Tigers. I'm going to guess fortune teller, crystal ball, 2 years from now, and in the second to last year of his contract, they're going to let him go and eat the money. It's same thing. I'd anticipate the same kind of possibility or situation for Xander Bogaerts at the back end of his career. Same with Chris Bryant and same with Francisco Lindor. And before we get into it much longer, because we do have some other standings to get to, okay? As I adjust my microphone over here. And by the way, blow my nose because shout out to pollen. That stuff's awesome. But you could put Francisco Lindor, Chris Bryant, Xander Bogaerts, and Javi Baez, just all of them drop them in the same exact bucket. Got paid after having a really illustrious, successful, highly productive first 6, 7 years of their career on teams and in organizations that had high standards, had them as high prospects, called them up, allowed them to play regularly, develop, and then subsequently put up awesome numbers, get a ton of playoff experience, right? Javi and Chris Bryant in Chicago, Lindor in Cleveland, Bogarts in Boston, play really well. Comes time for free agency. Give me the bag. Then they secure the bag. And then they forget how to play baseball. They just forget. Lindor, yeah, he was traded, but then restructured and obviously signed a monster deal. Xander Bogaerts in free agency, Chris Bryant in free agency, and Javi Baez in free agency, right? Sign a monster bag, they forget how to hit. Coincidence or de-incentivized to play hard? That's honestly what you can just chalk it up to. It's no disrespect. Chris Bryant, MVP caliber guy. Javi Baez, second place in MVP voting at one point. World champions, a couple of those guys. Xander Bogaerts, world champion. People talking about him, best shortstop in baseball a couple years ago, not too long ago. Then these guys, numbers kind of start to just fall off. And oh, by the way, where did they all sign? San Diego, never won anything. Detroit, had some winning seasons in the past, but not a great team. Javi Baez knows that. Chris Bryant, Colorado Rockies, not a great team. Never won anything. These guys aren't stupid, man. They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. It's no disrespect. Go get your money. Anybody who's worked hard and earned money, they deserve it. No question. But they're not stupid. The only different one is maybe Lindor, but ultimately, his situation to me, it kind of it gets summed up with what happened last year with the Mets, right? Assembled a super team, literally. Highest payroll, I think, in recorded baseball history. And they stunk. Lindor was supposed to be a middle of the order guy, stud, and last year, he wasn't good. And guess what happened to Lindor? Nothing. Money's still coming in. He's still hitting middle of the order for them. Opening day 2024. And this year, he's been really, really bad. And nothing happens. It is what it is. The point is, these guys are not incentivized to play hard anymore. And then when they play hard-ish or they're trying and they don't see success, they're not driven. They're not motivated to go in, check out extra film in the film room, get those extra swings in the cages, go out and give it everything they absolutely positively can, change their swing. They're getting older. They need to restructure the mechanics of how they're trying to attack the ball. Nope. Doesn't matter. Why would they? They're getting paid. And those four dudes in the exact same bucket. Exact same bucket. All right, that's my ranter portion of this one. Tigers talked about it in the standings. They're in fourth place, 23 and 27. Chicago White Sox are 15 and 36. They're the worst team in baseball. American League West. Seattle Mariners, 27 and 24. First place. First place in the American League West. Um, is it going to last? Mariners in first place in the West? I don't know. But they're the only team in the American League West above 500. Huh? Yeah. Astros got off to a horrendous start, and they've played better baseball. But they're sitting in third place at 22 and 28. The Rangers are 24 and 27. The Oakland A's, 21 and 31. Angels, 20 and 30. Realistically, I'm not sure how things are going to ultimately kind of balance out in that division, but I will tell you, I think that AL West is going to have one playoff team, just based on how things are shaping up. I think it's going to be one playoff team. Moving on to the National League. Okay, NL East, Philadelphia Phillies in the NL East. They lead the division. They have a 6-game lead. They have the best record in the National League, and they have the best record in baseball. They are 37 and 14. They're 9 and 1 in the last 10. They've won 6 in a row. They have a plus 93 run differential. All those things, the best in baseball. If you look at team stats in 2024, the Phillies are third in baseball in team OPS. They are third in baseball in team ERA. A lot of their success this year has definitely been sort of timely hitting, but they've also just like beaten teams up pretty bad. They have played 6 games against teams over 500. Okay, let me repeat that. The Phillies are 37 and 14. Okay, if my quick math serves me correctly, 47, 51 games this season. And they've played 6 against a team with a record above 500. 6 games. Okay? Here's the deal. People are knocking the Phillies for like being good. And oh, they haven't played anybody. And oh, whatever. Yeah, that's called the ebbs and flows of the season. The Phillies at 37 and 14, they will come back down to earth a little bit, right? Because they're on pace for, I don't know, 118 wins. That's not going to happen. Of course. They haven't played a ton of teams above 500. That being said, they haven't played a lot of teams above 500, and they've killed them all. What are you supposed to do when you play bad teams? Oh, that's right. Exactly what the Phillies are doing. Dominating them night in and night out. 9 and 1 in your last 10, 37 and 14 on the season. Head over to the Phillies schedule. This weekend, they open up a series against the Colorado Rockies. Oh my God, they haven't played anybody good. Okay, they're going into Denver. They should probably beat the Rockies. And guess what? They will at least win 2 out of 3. I promise you they will win 2 out of 3. Maybe sweep. Then they go to San Francisco. That's a team below 500. Probably going to handle business there. Okay? Then you look at their month of June. They play the Cardinals. Not a bad squad. Then they got to play the Brewers. Not a bad squad. Then they got to go to London and play the Mets. Then they play the Red Sox. Not a bad team. They play the Orioles in Baltimore. Not a bad team. They play the Padres. Above 500 team. D-backs, Tigers, Marlins. Then you come to July. They play the Cubs for 3 on the road. Braves for 3 on the road. Dodgers for 3. Oakland A's aren't great. All-Star break in Pittsburgh. That's an above 500 team, or was. Minnesota Twins for 3. Guardians for 3. Yankees for 3. That's July. Of these teams they've played in July, Cubs, Braves, Dodgers, Twins, Guardians, Yankees. All of them could be above 500, should be above 500, when they're facing off against each other. So, point being, come back to me in July. For the time being, stop hating on the Phillies for beating bad teams. Makes no sense. Makes no sense. Braves are 29 and 18. They are 6 games back of the Phillies, but they have a good record, 29-18. They've played pretty well. They're 500 against teams above 500, but they're good at home. Um, plus 49 run differential. Braves are good. They'll find their way in the playoffs. There's no question. In third place is the Nationals, 21-28, 21-27 rather. 2-8 in their last 10, lost 2 in a row. They're not great against teams above 500, but they have some, shiny pieces to build off of. Mackenzie Gore, CJ Abrams. Sounds like they're either going to or soon to be calling up their top prospect, James Wood, that they got from my Padres in exchange for Juan Soto. Wish we had him right now in San Diego. But the Nationals, they weren't expected to be good. They're not going to be good. 21-27 is probably right where most people would have them. Um, you know, 48 games into the season. The Mets are in fourth. They're 21-28. The Mets are a bad team. They don't have a ton of bad players. Actually, they have a lot of good players, at least on paper. But they have no leadership. They have nobody in the locker room to hold them accountable. The veteran leadership guys that are like maybe Lindor, McNeil, they're not playing well. They don't lead by example. And so when those guys don't play well, the team's not going to play well. They have a first-year manager. They have a bunch of these rumors swirling about probably who their best offensive player is in Pete Alonso and if he's going to get traded. He's a free agent at the end of the year. What's the contract look like? Combined with the fact that it seems like every single time they do have a lead in the late innings, their bullpen comes in and decides to choke it away. Edwin Diaz was probably going to be the only guy where it was like, okay, we know what we're going to get from him. He's going to come in. He's going to shut the door. Turns out he's forgotten how to close games. Not sure what's going on with him mentally. All of it, yet again, pretty much a repeat of last year. Perfect storm of garbage. Turns out the team stinks. Nobody's in there to stop the bleeding. They don't have a single guy in that clubhouse that's like, all right, enough. We're done being bad. Francisco Lindor, your OPS needs to be above 700, man. Jeff McNeil, stop trying to hit home runs. You're not a power hitter. You've never been a power hitter. We signed you to get on base in front of the big horses. Pete, I'm sorry. Who knows about the contracts? Let's hit homers. Brandon Nimmo, be the leadoff guy. Starling Marte, try harder. Like, put in more effort. And everybody in the bullpen, lock it down. Edwin, dude, you were the best a year and a half ago. Yeah, you got hurt. Yeah, it was a fluke. Yes, it sucked. Let's lock it in. They don't have anybody that's ever going to do any of those things. I don't know if that's what it takes. I'm not an expert in, human psychology or how to, rally a team or be a manager. But those are all the messages that need to be conveyed to that team in New York that certainly aren't. I think most of those guys probably know what I just said, but they just kind of choose not to, really flip the switch and give it everything they've got and play better. And you get all those things plus a rookie manager, and you got the New York Mets who stink again. Yeah, that's where they are. Marlins in last in the NL East, 17-34, bad team. NL Central, National League Central. This division is interesting. So, first of all, I thought the Reds would be good, and they can't really hit. So the Reds are last in the NL Central, but they're 20-30. Yeah, that's pretty bad. But man, they have some good players. I don't know. They can't hit. First in the NL Central is the Milwaukee Brewers, 28-21. Brewers are good. They can hit. They've pitched the ball pretty well, but plus 38 run differential. They're solid. They're a solid enough team. The Cubs are 27-24 in that division. They're in second place. -1 run differential, oddly enough. But they've had some really good starting pitching. They've had some solid offensive contributions. Bellinger's been pretty good for them again. So yeah, Cubs are solid. Cardinals are 23-26, 8-2 in their last 10, 3-game winning streak. -43 in the run differential, maybe a little bit misleading. But Cardinals to me just don't scare me like at all. Right. I mean, you turn on the Cardinals games or you watch the Cardinals highlights and it's like Paul Goldschmidt forgot how to hit. Nolan Arenado is like making errors. Who's starting tonight? Lance Lynn. right? Like Kyle Gibson. It's just it's just such a it's just a melting pot of just kind of underachieving mediocrity, which is very uncharacteristic for I think an organization like the Cardinals, at least based on what they've done in the past. But we've talked about them extensively and how it's similar to the Mets, where they just don't really have anybody in that clubhouse to whip them into shape like they used to, right? With Yachty, with Albert Pujols, with Wainwright, I don't have those guys anymore. Um, Combined with a little bit of underperformance from some of the younger guys that they were hoping to play pretty well. You know, Nolan Gorman's off to a slower start. Mason Wynn's been good, but not great. Just, is what it is, right? Dylan Carlson, not great, whatever. That's kind of the Cardinals. Not great, whatever. Pirates are in fourth in the NL Central. They're 23 and 28. Pirates have a lot of great pieces, man. Great pieces. Paul Skeens is great. Henry Davis hasn't even been a huge contributor for them, but oh, that's right. He was a top first round pick for the Pittsburgh Pirates to play catcher. O'Neill Cruz, Brian Reynolds, Key Brian Hayes hasn't been a big piece for them this year. Like they have the young pieces to do it. Oh, Jared Jones. So that's what I was thinking of, the starting pitcher. Mitch Keller, who knows? Like they've got a lot of good pieces, man. A lot to build off of in Pittsburgh. We'll see where they end up, next year or the following year. That's when it's probably going to be time to start taking the Pirates a little more serious. This year, it's development time, and I think they're doing it the right way. They're getting Skeens up, letting him chuck the rock a little bit, get a feel for the big leagues, get some innings under his belt so that if they are competitive in the following years, he's got some innings logged, he's been built up, and knows what it takes to be a big league starter. Mentioned the Reds, 20 and 30. Not sure if they'll figure it out, man, but kind of tough. And then last division here, NL West. Dodgers are in first. They're 33 and 19. Nobody's shocked by that. Plus 77 run differential. Good team. Absolutely killing the ball. Mookie and Shohei are just, it's absurd, but it's really crazy. Honestly, I won't even talk about them that much because they got Walker Bueller back. They're just solid, they're really solid. And they're going to continue to be solid. They haven't even had a lot of their primary bullpen pieces, and they just continue to crank out win after win after win. 33 and 19, in my opinion, based on what they've got at their disposal and what they're going to get back. I think that's a little bit under where they could be if everybody was healthy. Second place in that division, my San Diego Padres, 27 and 26. 5 and 5 in their last 10, 2-game win streak, plus 16 run differential. They are 10 and 16 at home. They are 17 and 10 on the road. They are 14 and 10 against teams above 500. So, are they good? Are they bad? My answer is yes to both. Right? They've played the Dodgers. They are leading the season series currently against the Dodgers in the number of games they've played. They are leading the season series against the Cubs. They won the season series against the Reds. They are leading the season series against the Giants. And they're leading the season series against the Atlanta Braves. Last week, they played the Rockies for 3 games at home. The Rockies swept them. Are they good? Yes. Are they also bad? Yes. That's it for the Padres. Xander Bogaerts is out for a long time. He broke some bones in his shoulder diving for a ball. I don't know, 3 months recovery, maybe more, maybe less. He hasn't been a contributor in the lineup, so losing him is not, to me, the end of the world for them. See what happens. Giants are in third place in the NL West, 25 and 26, minus 24 run differential, getting lucky. What's new? D-backs are 24 and 26, just a half game behind the Giants. They're starting to play a little bit better. Corbin Carroll has forgotten what it takes to be a good player. It kind of sucks to see, but They'll get some guys. I mean, they're trying to get Eduardo Rodriguez, Gordon Montgomery kind of hasn't fully clicked for them in that rotation. Merrill Kelly, I think, is hurt. You know, D backs, dare I say, last year was a little bit fluky. Well, of course it was. I mean, they were 84-win team, got in the playoffs and ran the table to the World Series. So, yeah, it's a little bit fluky, but um, D backs are a 500 team. It's what everyone kind of had them at. And then in last place, of course, the Rockies, 16-33, bad baseball team. So yeah, that's it. In terms of hitting stats, player specific hitting stats, the current leader in OPS in Major League Baseball is Kyle Tucker. Kyle Tucker, 1060 OPS, pretty good. Kyle Tucker has 17 home runs. Oh, okay, Kyle. He has 177 at bats. Quick math, home run every 10.7. Pretty good. Second in the league in OPS, Shohei Ohtani, cool, 1059. Third is Marcelo Ozuna, 1036. And then 4 and 5 are the sluggers in New York. Judge and Soto, 1027, 972. And then sixth place is Mookie at 970. A couple other names on here that might catch you off guard. Got Gunnar Henderson, seventh in the league with a 952 OPS. And in ninth, my Padres have Jurickson Profar with the 942 OPS. Couple of last things here to talk about. Okay. Year by year averages in Major League Baseball obviously fluctuate and will probably start to correct itself as things go on. And it's not entirely uncommon to maybe see the start of the year in baseball be slower for hitters and then start to pick up as things go on and time starts to develop. Um, but we tend to over exaggerate in our content and on this show, but I really want to make sure this is understood. Okay. Baseball is headed in a really dangerous direction, a really kind of bad direction. Um, you've got pitching injuries higher exponentially than they've ever been in baseball history. You've got officiating and umpires that are like as historically probably as bad as they've ever been, also magnified by the technology and resources we have at our disposal. But you've got interference calls being made to end baseball games. Um, you've got obviously the jerseys that's been addressed and is a complete disaster. You've got the gambling situation again with Shohei Ohtani repeatedly just coming up in the news and being swept under the rug. As it turns out, some of his teammates in Anaheim were also gambling with an illegal bookmaker. Forget about that. Um, but you've got all those things, and then this umpire stuff comes up, and it starts to bring out more and more people who start to share the same sentiment about Major League Baseball. Because this White Sox Orioles game ends on a horrendous interference call, and it just magnifies the really bad, ugly, dangerous direction that Major League Baseball is going and refuses to be addressed by the commissioner, refuses to be talked about, refuses to be uh, really run consistently so that solutions can start to be provided. With pitcher injuries, of course, the jersey fiasco was so bad that they were forced to do something about it. And now I guess they're going to revert to the old jerseys next year. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Ohtani gambling, yeah, it didn't happen. But also, it turns out one of his teammates was using the same bookmaker. Let's just forget that happened for a second. You've got the officiating in Major League Baseball that is so bad and is such a main storyline And these umpires try so hard to make such an impact on the game that it's so damaging to the sport. And it seems to be one of the main talking points about baseball 2 months into the season is how bad the officiating is. And then it brings out more and more people and starts to turn people off to baseball more and more and more. The interference call happens. I see a tweet that is a sentiment shared by tons of people, right? Horrible, horrendous interference call in baseball. And just another example of a night in and night out basis of Major League Baseball officiating and the umpires trying to assert themselves and make an impact and just like blowing calls, being horrible at calling balls and strikes, being horrible at making judgment calls in the infield, in the outfield, everything they do. They're super confrontational, they're old, they're obnoxious, and it's always the storyline. And I see a tweet come up that's the same sentiment that everybody shares from this gentleman on Twitter. He says MLB is such an unwatchable product. There's like 5 good teams. Everyone else half-asses it for 7 months. The product itself is watered down. Bad teams remain in the playoff race because of the third wild card in the expanded playoffs. There are nerd stats everywhere, and the umpiring is at an all-time low. And then I see an additional part of that starting pitchers go 4.4 and 2/3 per game. Their elbows still explode. The league OPS is like 670. There's an irrelevant wild card team in the World Series every year. The only thing remotely interesting about modern baseball is Shohei Ohtani. I don't I don't I don't know. I still love baseball and I'll always love it. But the damage that Rob Manfred has done is is so hard to quantify and easy to pass over. Because the pitch clock, oh yeah, the games are going faster. And oh yeah, let's do it. No, but now oh, limit the pitching changes or limit the mound visits or 3 batter minimums, right? All that stuff. That's going to speed the game up. Better product on TV, better this and that. More offense, limit the shift. But Rob, league OPS this year is right now the lowest it's been in, let's check. There you go. And that's maybe I'll summarize it in a better way. Um, the new rules, pitching changes, or the new rules in baseball from Manfred, the damage he's done to the sport, it may be irreparable. I know it's really, really detrimental, hard to kind of quantify, but it is so drastic, and people just simply don't realize the damage that the new rules have done and the commissioner's done. Because he tried to change and limit things like the shift, limit mound visits, 3 batter minimums, pitch clock, get the game moving quicker, get more offense going. Let's get some more action, limiting pickoff attempts, stolen bases, all this different stuff. Apparently, that was supposed to help the sport. Turns out, pitching injuries are the highest they've ever been. Um, Turns out, teams are struggling to even land TV contracts. Turns out, league OPS right now is under 700, and that would be the first time league OPS is under 700 since 1989. Starting pitchers don't pitch 5 innings, rarely at all anymore. Because if they do, A, their arms explode, or B, the team won't let them based on the numbers that they have of facing a team third time through. So starters only go 4, maybe 5 innings. Then the bullpen comes in. Everyone's throwing 99 to 100 miles an hour, which I mean, I'm entertained by, but offense is down, very limited. Some of the star players that were used to be kind of the faces of the league at this point have pretty much just kind of dissolved. They've vanished. Um, some of the best players 3 years ago are now almost irrelevant in the sport. And honestly, it seems like there's probably about 4 to 5 teams that actually have a legitimate chance to win the World Series. But then, as it turns out, there's some typically like a random 84 win team wild card 6 team that manages to get into the World Series, which I don't think is necessarily great for the sport. When you've got 4, 5, 6 teams that win 100 or close to 100 games and then don't even get through the championship series round. The sport of baseball is heading in a kind of a dangerous direction, right? Um, it'll be okay. I'll always watch baseball, and that's what they're banking on is people like me who love the sport more than anything, and will always continue to watch it. Um, but this tailoring towards more of the casual fan base, I think, has also led some overcorrection from the teams and the analytics side, where the sport as a whole has just entirely changed. And they'd rather have 9 innings of every guy on the mound throwing 100 and sacrifice the starting pitcher only throwing for 4 2/3, 5 innings total. Because if you can only throw 100 for 5 innings, then get him out, bring in a new guy, and it'll be harder to hit. And I think the sport's in a really dangerous spot. I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen. Kind of stinks, but ultimately, not much I can do about it except maybe call some attention to it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed, man. Episode 53, We Know Baseball podcast. My handle on Twitter is at Ryan Knows Ball. Um, Social media handles at We Know Ball Sports, Instagram and TikTok. Check us out on YouTube. If you're a listener on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, thank you for sticking around for almost an hour and a half. Had a lot to discuss, had a lot to talk about as we cover, the time that we missed. Hopefully we can be much more regular with this show. Appreciate any and everybody that listens, supports in any capacity, takes in our content. I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We'll be back definitely next week to talk some more baseball. Hopefully you guys will be there with me. And otherwise, we'll catch you guys next time. Peace.
Let's go. Batter up. We're taking the afternoon off. It's a beautiful day for a home run. But even a triple's okay. We're gonna cheer